Welcome to Inspiration Rising. I'm your host, David Trotter, and we're here to inspire you to rise up in your life, love, and leadership. In 2008, Neil Pasricha had a brutal year. And in response, he started a blog called 1,000 Awesome Things, where he wrote about something that was awesome every single day, like the first bite into chewing gum or flipping over your pillow to the cool side. Well, the site exploded with traffic, and it soon turned into a book called The Book of Awesome, which was a #1 international bestseller for 142 weeks in a row. Neil has now written multiple best-selling books, and his next book comes out today, November 5th, 2019, and it's called You Are Awesome: How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and Live an Intentional Life. And it focuses on how to cultivate resilience in our lives. Neil has an infectious enthusiasm for life and intentional living, and you're going to love my conversation with him. Now, before we jump into the interview, I want to remind you that 2020 is just around the corner, and I want it to be your best year yet. If you're feeling dissatisfied in any area of your life, I want to help you get unstuck and develop a workable plan to take your life to the next level. Currently, we have 12 students midway through the Launch Your Life course and coaching experience, and I love hearing about their breakthroughs every week during our mastermind video call. Yes, it's a course where there's online videos and workbook, but it's also a coaching experience where I work directly with each person along the way to ensure that you get the breakthrough that you truly need. Well, the next session of the Launch Your Life online course and coaching experience begins on January 15th, 2020, and enrollment is limited to only 20 students. To learn more about the Launch Your Life program, visit insporising.com/launch. And if you enroll by December 1st, 2019, you'll receive a significant discount on the retail price. So visit insporising.com/launch. I would love for you to be one of those 20 students to enroll in this life-changing coaching program. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Neil Pasricha. Well, Neil, thanks so much for taking some time to hang with us today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, David. Thank you for all the work you do and all the beautiful art you put out into the world.
Yeah. Well, I know looking back, 2008, one of the worst years of my life, without a doubt. And it sounds like 2008 was a pretty tough year for you. So take me back to that year. And I also know you started something to kind of cope with that situation in your life. So tell us what happened and what you did to cope with it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think 2008, for those that may or may not remember, it was hard for everybody because first of all, it was the economic recession kind of cracked everything open. The stock market dived, which of course has a huge impact on a lot of people's livelihoods. People lose jobs, people lose incomes, people lose nest eggs. And so for me, on top of that sort of layer of ugliness, was two big, huge things. One is my wife of 2 years told me one night after work that she did not love me anymore and she did not want to be married to me anymore. And although she was probably right, I can say from the future, at the time I was like in total shock. Like I of course loved her and wanted to be married to her. We just bought a house. We're talking about having kids. Like I was stunned. And on top of that, I didn't have time to even process the shock because my best friend took his own life. And that happened just days after I heard that my marriage was going to end.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was like an extreme set of events. And my friend Chris, and I don't know if you know this or not, Dave, but suicide is now the 10th leading cause of death in this country, and number 2 for people under age 29. So it's like we're just not talking about it enough. We sweep it under the rug. The newspapers are full of people, murders, but actually our suicide rate is double our murder rate. So I didn't know all this at the time. All I knew was I lost my best friend, I lost my wife, I lost my marriage, I lost my house, I lost my social connection with a lot of people.
Yeah,
and
Did you fight for your marriage? You know what I mean? Like everybody experiences that in a different way. Is it just kind of like, okay, she doesn't want to be a part of this, I guess we're done?
Well, people ask me that today. They're like, did you guys go to couples therapy? What did you try to do? And I said a couple things here. One is there were some signs that things were not going well. So a couple times she tried to broach the conversation. I don't think I was ready to hear it.
Mm.
And two, she met someone else. So I don't talk about that too much just because I'm trying to be, sensitive and respectful to her. And I don't judge her for it, but she had developed a chemistry type of connection with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore it was clear that it was not going to work because she was becoming aware of her emotions to somebody else.
Yeah.
And by the way, again, from the future, I can say it's great that happened because she's now living a happy life and has children with somebody else. And so am I. But at the time, I had nothing. I was like devastated. I lost 40 pounds just due to stress. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. People at work thought, they were like, "You look great, man. What's your secret?" I'm like, it's just stress. So I start this blog. That's the coping mechanism. You're into that.
Yeah.
And the blog is called 1000awesomethings.com. And so for 1,000 straight days, which is a long time, I wrote an entry on my blog every day about something small that was awesome, like the smell of a bakery or wearing sweatpants all day, which I'm doing today, by the way, or, finding $5 in your old coat pocket, or getting called up to the dinner buffet first at a wedding, or flipping to the cold side of the pillow. It was just stuff like that. And I wrote an essay about it and I posted it, and lo and behold, the blog took off. It eventually hit. Nobody read it, of course, at the beginning, but eventually it got some traction. A few big websites started covering it. It was on the front page of like reddit.com and stuff. And then what happened was, I won an award for like best blog in the world, which doesn't even sound real, but it is. And I go to New York City and I walked in a red carpet and I'm winning this award from the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences for best blog. And then I come home and 10 literary agents are waiting to turn 1000awesomethings.com into the Book of Awesome.
Sure.
So you asked about 2008. Well, the Book of Awesome, my first book, came out in 2010. It's all about gratitude, obviously, and using these small, simple pleasures as essentially like a rope ladder when we're struggling with things, as I did myself. And it's funny because, again, I'm talking from the future now, and you're asking me about something a while ago.
Sure.
The most common feedback I get on the Book of Awesome is, this helped me through my divorce. This helped me through the loss of my husband. This helped me through the cancer I was fighting. Like, honestly, I have no idea how people can sense through the words that I wrote those things at the time of my own struggle. Because nowhere in the Book of Awesome do I say, "Oh, I was going through a divorce," or I don't even mention it once. It was not about me. But yet somehow through the words and the power of language, I guess, or people's own innate sort of perception skills, which we all have a very finely attuned BS meter these days, they have used it on the same exact emotional state that I was in. And so I found that so fascinating.
Awesome. Literally awesome. Yeah, so good. So you wrote a book on gratitude, which is the Book of Awesome. You also wrote a book on the subject of happiness. Why were you interested in writing a book now on the subject of resilience, which is your new book?
Yeah, sure. So years after that divorce, I ended up meeting somebody new. Her name is Leslie. We fell in love. I'm saying a very long story in a very short amount of sentences.
Of course.
We fell in love. She moved in with me. We got married. And on the flight home from our honeymoon, which was in Southeast Asia, she got sick. And so she, like, on the flight. So then we have a layover. She's looking for a pharmacy. She needs to lie down. She's like, "I don't think I can get on the plane." So I'm like, "Yeah, it's a 13-hour flight home. I don't blame you." And she's like, "Why don't we just get on? I think I can make it." So we go on the plane and it takes off. It goes like above the clouds. She goes to the airplane bathroom at the front of the plane. She comes, like a few minutes later, she comes back to our seats and she says, "I'm pregnant." See, she bought the pregnancy test in the airport pharmacy in Malaysia.
Okay.
She did the pregnancy test in the airplane, in the bathroom. She did the pregnancy test right then. That's why she said, "I'm pregnant." She just found out. She had the pregnancy. She had the like little digital thing. She's like, "Here it is." And then I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm going to have kids." And so I wrote the Happiness Equation, which is the book you mentioned on happiness, essentially as a 300-page love letter to my unborn child on how to live a happy life. Honestly, David, it comes from kind of like me worried, like what if anything happens to me before they become a teenager, before they become a 20-something and they don't get to hear dad's advice. So, and I'd been researching this for years because of course of the success of the Book of Awesome, people are all asking me how to be happy and what's the science say and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I have a lot to say on this. And so my last book, The Happiness Equation, is all about happiness. And it was originally a letter to my kids. Now you're asking, well, why'd you write about resilience? So first of all, classic author, especially nonfiction author, I'm like, oh, now I realize that my books are not all about awesomeness or not all about gratitude. They're about intentional living. Like I'm really fascinated by this idea that our lives are only 30,000 days long. You know, that's very short. And how do we make sure that they count? And so gratitude was the first book. Happiness is the last one. And this one's about resilience. Okay. Here's why I think resilience is the biggest issue of our day today. Because you can press a button and a car will pick you up at work. Your phone will entertain you on the way home. You can press another button and order food. And by the time you get to your house, like your food's waiting for you on your porch.
Sure.
We're living like kings.
Right.
We are living in the era of the most infinite abundance ever. We live in the best time ever to be alive. At the same time, and you may or may not know this, our rates of anxiety, loneliness, suicide, and depression and mental illness have all skyrocketed. And I don't mean they're going up. I mean they're skyrocketing. I mean the most recent data we have on anxiety, especially in women, especially young women, is that it went up 30%. 30% in the last 5 years. You know, it usually goes up like 1%. Like this is huge. And so my argument is this is because the world is so abundant, we no longer have the tools to handle failure or even perceived failure. These days when we fall, we just lie on the sidewalk crying. We're turning into an army of like porcelain dolls. We aren't tough. We aren't mentally tough. And I'm including myself in this. And by the way, I'm just as likely as everyone to be like, oh no, my picture only got 2 likes on Instagram. I guess I have no friends.
Sure.
You know, this is what we do. We kind of create this terrible picture that everything's going wrong. Because we don't have the school, we don't have the education and the musculature really to handle and navigate failure. And so, You Are Awesome, my new book, which has the purposeful subtitle, by the way, How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and Live an Intentional Life, is all about resilience. It's all about how to grow this muscle that I'm arguing we all desperately need today.
I think it's funny. Obviously, it's part of your brand, the term awesome, that you titled the book, or your publisher did, You Are Awesome, when that message is actually, I think, part of the underlying message of fragility. Like everybody thinks they're awesome. And then when I slightly feel like I'm not awesome, then my world falls apart.
Yeah, I the word that popped into my mind is like anathema, if I'm saying that right. You know, it's like, isn't it the opposite of how people feel? And actually, that's partly why, and I won't blame my publisher, I actually was the one that thought this would be a good title, is because right now when I talk to people, I give speeches, I'm in colleges, I'm in universities, I'm talking to parents of children, I'm talking to parents themselves as they go through career changes or losing a job or losing a relationship. The underlying theme I hear is people thinking to themselves, David, I'm not awesome. I stink. I suck. I'm not worthy. And so part of the reason I titled the book You Are Awesome is because I'm trying to reclaim that sentiment that I think we all need to have and we need to remind ourselves about. And we need to tell ourselves that we're awesome because we truly are, and we have forgotten it. And sometimes I think all we need is a few kind of guideposts and sort of pieces of wisdom, bodies of research, personal stories that help remind us why we're all works in progress and why we're actually pretty good. And so when you open You Are Awesome, it literally is the set of 9 whittled down, carefully curated, 7 times edited pieces of wisdom that I was able to develop in my own life, and which I think my kids and anyone reading it will benefit from. So that's kind of where the title came from. And to your point, it's like, it would be really hard for me, the guy who's written, 5 books and 10 calendars and 3 journals with the word awesome, to like use a different word. I'm beholden to the torture chamber that I've created for myself. You know what I'm saying?
Of course. So I do want to jump into those 9 secrets because I want to pique our listeners' interest to get and read the book. But I want to jump into a few of these secrets just to get you to tease them out for us.
Yes.
Chapter 1 is called Add a ... Now, what is it about an ellipsis that is so powerful?
Well, here's the thing. I was starting in this place where I thought, someone's going to get handed this book when they're going through cancer, or when they're going through, they just lost their spouse, or they just lost a child, or they lost their job, or something huge just happened. And when that happens to people, we get stuck. We actually don't move. We project forward and we think my life is over. We put a period on the end of our sentences. And so in this chapter 1, I use my mom's story of being born, frankly, the wrong gender in a terrible time in East Africa under a dictator, being forced into an arranged marriage at a young age to a guy she met once before the wedding, being shipped off to another continent where she knew nobody in a language that she didn't really speak. It wasn't her first language, in a city with all 100% white people, and she was brown. And so she had no culture. She was also culturally neutered. And I use her story intertwined with the research around the ellipses and the research around keeping your options open to show people that when you are going through major life struggle, the key there is to add a ... to turn the period that you perceive at the end of your sentence to one of simply continuing to move, continuing to breathe, continuing to operate. If you can switch that to an ellipses, you can keep moving. And of course, I share the history of the ellipses, what that actually means in practice, some research studies behind it. And I also share a word that enables this thinking, which is the simple 3-letter word YET, Y-E-T. People like me, like you, like everybody, we talk so negatively to ourselves. You fail a test, you say, I'm not creative. You get a bad health record, your doctor says you have high cholesterol. You think, I don't take care of my body, or I don't exercise. People talk like this to themselves. And so I'm saying, if you just said the word yet, that's what I saw my mom doing. That's what the ellipsis does. It actually helps you see the little sliver of light between the door and the frame after the latch closes. So it's not, I'm creative. It's, I'm not creative, ... yet. It's not, I don't take care of myself. It's like, I don't take care of myself, ... yet. It's gone to the point now, David, where I've actually trained my kids not to say, I don't like broccoli. They just say, I don't like broccoli yet. And I know it sounds funny to hear a 3-year-old tell me like he doesn't like broccoli yet, but actually what he's doing in his own brain is quite a powerful little scientific trick. He's enabling his mind to hold the idea that he might in the future like it. And that's what I'm trying to teach people to do. It's the very first secret of the book. So, we kind of start from the bottom, as it were, when someone that can't move or can't function or can't breathe or can't operate. And that's what I saw my mom doing. When she came to Canada, she was like, I don't know how to live in Canada yet. I don't know eat meat yet. She started eating meat because you couldn't really be vegetarian in the 60s in the suburbs of Toronto. There was like, what are you going to do? Pick the bacon bits out of your Caesar salad? Like that's all you couldn't do anything. The barbecue has no veggie dogs, So she just kept saying, well, I don't, Dad wants to go ballroom dancing. Well, I don't ballroom dance yet. And honestly, that type of thinking, as simple or as trite as it may sound, is steeped in deep scientific research that shows when you hold on to the idea of the ellipsis and the word yet, you enable your future self to open that door one day. And that is such a powerful dose of forgiveness and of liberation that you can do for yourself. And all it takes is that 3-word phrase and introducing it into your mind. This is what happens, right? People say, oh, why'd you go into law school? It's like, I'm not good at anything else. Or why you marry that guy then if you don't like him? It's like, well, I'm really no good at dating. No, I'm not good at anything else yet. I'm not good at dating yet. Let yourself be open to what your own future could bring you if you allow it to come.
Keeps the door open, basically.
Exactly.
Like you said, it's just a very early first step, for someone just to go, okay, let me just keep that door open. In chapter 3, it's called See It as a Step, which ties into the concept that you're saying. You talk about the end of history illusion.
Yes.
And so when are we tempted to believe this illusion? Well, first of all, tell us what that illusion is. When are we tempted to believe it? And what's another option?
Sure, exactly. So in this chapter, I talk about my divorce, which I've mentioned briefly, and how I thought, oh, well, I will never find anyone new. I will always be single. I will, I had no resilience to think of myself as someone worthy of dating. I actually thought I'm ugly, I'm unlovable, I'm a horrible person, right? And unfortunately, what the science teaches us, and this is a great piece of research from Daniel Gilbert from Harvard. He's the author of Stumbling on Happiness, and he teamed up with a group of researchers, and they interviewed 19,000 people, and they asked them two basic questions. First question was, hey, what did the last 10 years of your life look like? And the second question was, so what do you think the next 10 years of your life is going to look like? No matter what age the people were, whether they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, they all said the last 10 years of their life was this tempestuous portrait of changing relationships and careers and moving cities and like an endless array of ups and downs. But then when they were asked what the next 10 years of their life would look like, again, regardless of age, demographic, or background, they all said, oh, I think it'll be about the same as I am today. I don't think I'm definitely going to still be with Sally, and I for sure will still be at the same job. And definitely not going to. What are you talking about? The whole point of the research study proved that we have a human tendency in our brains to think that today is the day history ends. Because we can see the staircase, and I use this metaphor in the book of the staircase, because we can see the staircase behind us, right? You can see there's my prom, and there's the day I met Sally, and all that stuff. You can see it, so you know it. But in the future, you can't see the stairs above you. You can't see the path you're going on. So you therefore confuse the possibility of change with the probability of change. This is an important point. It means that you think, after you get fired, say, you think, I'll never find another job. But actually, you will. You just cannot picture it because you can't see it. And so the end of history illusion is frankly it's based in neuroscience. It says we all have the human tendency to think history stops today. It's not so bad if you're flying high, but if you're suffering through something, it can feel totally detrimental. And so how do we use it? Okay, this was your second question. You're like, okay, well, how do we use that to our advantage? Well, for this part, I share a story about how I used to have a terrible job. I was essentially the HR person at Walmart who would go with managers into the meeting room and fire people. And I did not do the firing, but I had to coach the manager before on what to say and what to do. And then I had to help the associate, we called it. They didn't use the word employee. We had to help the associate who was kind of having to pack up their trunk and put the pictures in a box, and they were crying and they were like, I'm never going to find another job. And I was working here 30 years and what am I going to do now?
And this was at the corporate level, right? Not the store level, correct?
Right. It was at the corporate level. So I worked as an HR manager in the head office as one of my early roles at Walmart. I was the director of leadership development there when I left after 10 years there. But I'm talking about kind of one of my earlier roles.
Sure.
And it was a hard job because obviously emotionally it weighed on me. But the point of the story is that every time I bumped into somebody years later who had been fired from the company years before, guess what they all told me? I'm not kidding when I say this. They all said to me, David, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Wow. If I hadn't got fired, I wouldn't have found this job at this small company that I love. I wouldn't have gone to Peru with my mom before she died. Sure. I wouldn't have been there for my daughter after she had her miscarriage. I wouldn't have decided I wanted to actually start up that business I always told myself I would do, but I never did it. And then when I got fired, I was like, oh, now I have some severance money and I have time. So I'm going to start up my little ukulele importing business or whatever it is. And by the way, I said ukulele importing business because I actually know a guy who said that exact phrase to me. He started up a ukulele importing business. I'm not joking. We actually have where I'm talking to you now, I actually can see the ukulele on our wall hanging there.
That's fun.
So the point is, even though everyone said to me at the time, what am I going to do now? I've been here 30 years. I'll never find another job. Guess what? They all loved it in the future. This is the point of the end of history illusion. Today, I'm married to a woman named Leslie. We have 3 little boys, 5 and under. Honestly, thank goodness I got divorced. Thank goodness. Because I could be unhappily married today. But instead, I'm happily married today with a woman I adore and who's the light of my life and with children that I could not imagine not being with. And so, thank goodness I got divorced. And the crazy thing is, this is how it works in life around everything. For everybody, because of our tendency to catastrophize, that we all think it's over when everything happens.
Did you know that I wrote an Inspiration Rising manifesto? I wanted to capture the heart of what we're doing on the podcast, on social media, and through our coaching experiences. We have people from all over the world who are reading these 7 powerful sentences to remind themselves of their true identity and feel empowered as they start their day. So if you want a physical copy of the Inspiration Rising Manifesto mailed to you anywhere in the world, just head on over to insporising.com/manifesto. That's insporising.com/manifesto. When I think back about all the jobs or roles that I didn't get in that moment, I was super sad, depressed, thought I'd never find, whatever I really wanted to do. When I was at my lowest point in 2008, I actually had a similar experience to you in 2008, but I was on the other side. I actually had an affair, and I ended up moving in with that woman, and I was a pastor at the time. Neil, let me tell you, that does not go over well with a church congregation when you, and I resigned, of course. And this gal ended up leaving me and going back to her husband like 40 days later. And at that point, I had lost my career that I had invested, time, energy, money. It was my calling, my passion. And I had lost my wife and kids. And I had lost this woman that I had put all my, the eggs in the basket for. And I'm at rock bottom. What do I think? Life is over. Like, life is over. Frankly, I didn't even want to live. And turns out now, that's what, 11 years later, my wife and I just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary because we were able to reconcile and get back together. I have 2 amazing kids that I now spend a ton of time with and enjoy. They're 16 and 20. And I am involved in some church stuff, but that's not the focus of my life. My focus is primarily on coaching people through these dark times in their life. And so
Which I'm assuming was partly enabled by your own navigating of that.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, you couldn't do it if you didn't do it.
Right. And so every single thing, like you said, from the dark points to the things that we have losses, it's so hard when we're in the midst of it to see any possibility of the staircase continuing upward. It's like the staircase ends here. So beautiful. The end of history illusion. And yet it is just a next step. And that's one of the most powerful things we can say to friends and family in the midst of that darkness is, there will be a next step. You'll look back on this day and
just
be
keep first add a ... to your point, what you did when you felt like there was no hope or no joy or no purpose. You kept breathing. You kept moving. You just lost the woman you had an affair with. You lost her. You lost that apartment. You presumably at the time felt like you had lost your marriage. You'd lost your job. You could have thought this is a period, but instead you added a ... You just kept breathing.
No, I wanted to add a period. Actually, I ended up with the help of some close friends and a therapist. I ended up checking myself into a hospital for 3 days because I was in such a dark place that I wanted to add a period. I wanted to end my life because I felt like I didn't have any life left. But it's only when we kind of have some people stabilize us and help go, okay, this is not the end. It doesn't have to be the end. And I'll tell you, you were in a different place in 2008, but I had small kids at the time. And the only thing that prevented me from adding a period was I didn't want that to be a part of their legacy. I didn't want that to be a part of their...
To have had a father that took his own life.
Yeah.
And how did you reconcile?
After I got out of the hospital, I, of course, had to, moved several times. And I only had a credit card that I was living on because I didn't have income. And I had this sense that I was supposed to turn the trajectory of my heart back toward my soon-to-be ex-wife. We had filed for divorce. And I told her, I said, you may not ever want to be with me. And I'm not asking to be with you, but I just want you to know that I'm going to be the best dad I could possibly be. I'm going to care for you in ways that I can care for you. And I just want you to know that. And so man, I'll never forget meeting up with her at a park and taking full responsibility of what I had done and the humiliation. And, it's just very humiliating because I was a very public person in that time and area because the church had grown quite large. And so, yeah, it was just a matter of me turning the trajectory of my heart and going, I'm going to serve you and care for you as the mother of our kids. And if something, if it comes together, great. Otherwise, I'm going to keep serving and loving you. But it's only because of not buying into the end of history illusion, like you said, that I was able to do that.
Well, and kudos on your tremendous heart for your vulnerability, for your openness, for your honesty, which of course helped create that conversation with your wife. But also, I know, and I can hear in the conversation with you, is what makes this podcast so enjoyable and listening to you so enjoyable, and because you're so vulnerable. So you share that, and that makes you a better coach, and it makes you a better leader. And so there's actually a provocative title in my book that the editor actually wanted to take out originally. It's on page 83, and it says, "Have you had enough one-night stands?" And it relates directly to this conversation we're having, because it was in like one of the advertising. It's funny. I live in Toronto, Canada, and so they made like Subway advertisements for this book, right? There's a big picture of "You Are Awesome," and there's like highlights from the book. Anyway, in the US, they snipped out that line, have you had enough one-night stands? And in Canada, they let it in. So really? I don't know what that tells you about, that maybe the Canadian culture is a little bit more liberal, and that was not like an eyebrow-raising thing at all. But in the US, they were like, we can't put that on the title. Meanwhile,
when I read it, by the way, when I read that, I was like, whoa, what is this? It really pulled me in,
It's an interest piquer. That's the purpose of it. But actually, the point is, it's because I came across this amazing study that was published in the Telegraph where they interviewed people that were in stable, long-term, loving relationships with what they called the one. So if you find the one, the person that your soulmate, the person that you're like, I'm happily married and I couldn't imagine being with a better person. Those are the people they interviewed for the study. And they asked all of them, so you're happily married? Yes, I am. I mean, I don't even know if they had to be married, but they're with the person that they love and whatever. And they say, so did you date? The interviewers are like, so did you date anyone before? And they're like, oh yeah, like I had 10 boyfriends, and then they're like, oh well, did you sleep with them? Like, well yeah, I slept with like 7 of them. And they're like, oh, and did anyone ever cheat on you? And they're like, well, yeah, like a couple guys did. And they're like, did you ever cheat on? Anyway, the whole point of the study was they actually used a composite of all these interviews to map the average road that the average person takes to finding the one. And guess what? That road, and I'm going to actually read it to you right now because I think it's really interesting, is the average woman will kiss 15 people, have 7 sexual partners, 4 one-night stands, 4 disaster dates, 3 relationships less than a year, 2 relationships more than a year. They will fall in love twice, be heartbroken twice, cheat once, and be cheated on once, all before she finds a lifelong partner. And the stats for men are almost identical. I think they kiss like 1 more person and have a couple more sexual partners, but really it's about the same. And the point is, when you hear that, imagine you're talking to your kid's like, I don't know, 16, and they're like, so dad, I really want to meet the one. And you're like, yeah, well, have you had 10 sexual partners, 6 one-night stands, 4 disasters? Have you? And the kid would be like, are you crazy? Like, of course I never want to do that. Like, that sounds horrible.
Right.
To get my heart broken repeatedly, to, all this stuff. But the point is, I'm not saying this is a should do, but the point is the average composite of the average person who has actually found the one is they have been through an average of that many steps. Meaning, so this is also related to the end of history illusion, meaning that it might be just that you don't have enough experience yet. Like, it might just be that, it's kind of like the old adage, and I don't know if you have this in the States, but in Canada, we have something called the turkey dump, where people who date in high school go to university or college, and on the Thanksgiving weekend, when they first return home, they dump each other. It's called the turkey dump. Do you guys have that?
We do not have that. No.
Okay.
I mean, it happens, but we don't call it that. Yeah.
I don't know why, because it's like so cliche, but the point is, it's like, once you're realizing like, oh, I have to, the road to romance actually really is rocky.
Yeah.
And part of what is building resilience is all about is just being aware of the fact that you might just be in a mode of your life or a moment of your life where that relationship that ended, or that disaster date, or that one night stand that didn't go well, or whatever, or even did go well, it might simply be part of the path you're on towards a future that you can't yet see.
Sure, sure. Geez. I can just hear my mom going, well, David, I just pray that doesn't happen to your kids. I just
Or
want them
David,
to
I've
have
just
the...
unsubscribed from your podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure she listens to begin with, but yeah, it is so fascinating. All right, chapter 4, you encourage us to lose more to win more, and this ties directly into the see it as a step. Why are you such a fan of losing?
Aha. Okay. Have you ever talked to a wedding photographer? This is something I always am fascinated with. I'm like, if you see someone's wedding photos, you're always like, wow, first of all, my friends look hotter and more beautiful than they ever have before. And even me, I'm in some of the wedding photos, I look great. And so I always have this fetish where I ask the wedding photographer, how'd you do it? How'd you take these 50 amazing pictures that are going to capture this memory and this moment for this couple for the rest of their lives? This is going to be a picture they hang above their mantle till they're 80 years old. And you know what every single wedding photographer always tells me? The same exact answer. I just take way more pictures. I take 1,000 pictures. So of course I'm going to have 50 good ones. I'm throwing away 95%, 95% of them just to find those 5%. And so that's an interesting, that kind of stuck in my brain. The other thing that stuck in my brain was the fact that when I was a kid, there was no internet, there was no Wikipedia. So my dad bought me, I used to really love baseball. And so my dad bought me the complete book of Major League Baseball statistics, which for a tiny nerd in the suburbs was this became my Bible. Okay. You throw around, I don't mean to throw in the word Bible.
No, I get you. Yeah.
Right. And so then I look it up. I'm like, oh, okay, who has the most wins of all time? And it's a guy you've probably heard of named Cy Young, right? And of course, they named the Cy Young Award after him. And he's won 511 wins in baseball. And as I kept paging through this book, I mean, I'm not kidding. The way people look at their cell phones before bed, I'd look at this thing before bed. One day I stumbled upon the most losses in baseball. And I was like, hey, that's weird. The guy with the most losses is Cy Young. He has 316 losses. And then I started looking through the book from a different lens. I was like, hey, wait a minute, who has the most strikeouts? And of course, it's Nolan Ryan, right? He's got 5,000 something strikeouts, 5,714. And then I'm like, well, that's the best thing you can do as a pitcher. What's the worst thing you can do as a pitcher? It's walking somebody, right? So guess who has the most walks? It's Nolan Ryan. He has 2,795. I'm like, interesting. When we look at models of success today, what we think we're looking at is someone who is super successful, someone who succeeded. Nolan Ryan, Cy Young, a wedding photographer. But actually, the lesson that I want to teach people is that actually what we're looking is somebody who simply, their greatest strength is navigating through failure. That actually is their biggest strength. You and I would take a picture. Oh, I shouldn't speak for you. I would take 3 pictures at a wedding and I'd be like, these suck. But if I took 1,000, I'd probably find 50 good ones. I would never get on a Major League Baseball pitching mound, but certainly I'd probably quit well before I attempted that many. These days they're always like, oh, Tom Brady has the most complete passes or whatever. I'm like, I look up who has the most incomplete passes. Betcha it's Tom Brady. He just played the longest. This guy is okay with losing, with failing, with missing a pass. His biggest success is actually navigating into the future. And so I looked at my own life and I looked up the research related to this, and turns out there's a ton of supporting research on this. One of the best interviews I discovered was by, have you heard of the newspaper The Onion?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, right. So The Onion, weekly comedy newspaper based originally in Wisconsin. Well, the former editor was a guy named Todd Hansen, and people used to always say to him, hey, how did you get to write jokes for a living? Everyone wants to write funny jokes and you get paid for it. And he'd always say, do it for free for 10 years. Because if you do it for free for 10 years, you will work through all the musculature required, which is resilience, in order to be okay with some being good, some being not. Some days you don't have any, you keep going. Okay. So I make the argument in this book, in this chapter, Lose More to Win More, that we are asking our graduates of universities the wrong question. These days, when you go hear a commencement speech, people always say, do what you love, find your passion, chase your purpose, blah, blah. No, that's not true. What we should be actually asking people in commencement speeches and if you're listening, I will be happy to give this speech at your university, is no, the question isn't do what you love. It's do you love it so much that you can take the pain and the punishment with it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you really want to be a rock star, then are you okay with lugging a heavy amp through sticky, smoky bars at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday for 7 years and practicing strumming the same 3-chord progression in your basement till your fingers get raw, till you nail it, till you can do it with your eyes closed, till you can do it while you sing, till you can do it while you're singing and people are talking or cheering in front of you? Can you do that? Not many people can do that. If you can take the pain and punishment that goes towards becoming a successful performing musician, then you will become a successful performing musician. It's just that the road to get there is so rocky that the vast majority of people will quit well before they do it. And for me as a writer today, people say, oh, Neil, like, must be nice. You got your 7th book out or whatever, right? Like this, You Are Awesome, my 7th book. But actually what they don't know, and although I tell them in this book, is I had no one when I was a kid. I used to read and write every night from the time my parents and my sister went to bed till like midnight because I didn't sleep very well and there was no internet. So I just developed the 10,000 hours earlier. And so this writing, if you ask my mom, is a function of me writing as a kid for 20 years without anyone seeing it or getting paid for it.
Mm-hmm. So much of the... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. So lose more to win more is, could you go through the pain and punishment to lose so that, of course, the win comes at the end?
Yeah. I love social media. And yet social media has just, allowed us to show the shiny parts, show the final moment of that rock star on stage, and not the years and years and years of practice and losses and challenges. I wanted to take a side note because I've heard you talk about these 3 Ps of social media that you find are challenging for us in this day and age. And I know that a lot of our listeners are moms of teenagers and older. And I don't want to be anti-social media, but at the same time, I do like your insights on this to help us reframe and help us see beyond the shininess of social media. So do you mind breaking those down real quick?
Sure. Well, first of all, I am anti-social media. I personally think it's a huge scourge. And although I was just as enamored with Facebook as everybody was when it came out, because I got in touch with my own aunts and whatever, and from a foreign country, like I have a weird last name, right? My last name is Pasricha, Neil Pasricha. So I searched Facebook and found like 30 people on Facebook with the same weird last name as me from all over the world. So I made a Facebook group called Pasrichas, we're everywhere, and like it turned into like this 1,000-person thing. And it was so fun. This was like 2006. Okay. Now I say there are 3 big problems and they all start with the letter P. The first one is physical. When we expose our brains to bright screens before bed, especially before bed, we don't produce melatonin overnight. So our resilience levels go down. So when we wake up in the morning, the first thing we want to do is turn to our phone. People say, oh, it's because my cell phone is my alarm clock. And I always say, go to Walmart. They're $10. You know what I mean? Just buy an alarm clock. There's actually I can't remember who it is. There's a CEO in the US, a really progressive CEO that's like actually handing out alarm clocks to his employees now because for this exact purpose. It's like he's trying to get people not to be like sleeping with their cell phone. The other physical problem, of course, is that we're becoming a nation of hunchbacks. We are getting texting thumb. Like it's not good for you to add 60 pounds of pressure to your spine, which is what you're doing when you text. So the first P is physical. The second P is psychological. This is a big issue. Social media tells us that everyone else is awesome. And it kind of reminds you that you're not. So the way it does this is it showcases everybody else's greatest hits, and you are left living your life in the director's cut version. By definition, as we live in this giant flattening 8 billion person community now, you will never, ever be the best at anything, ever. You will never get that feeling again, ever. You will never have the most followers. You will never have the most friends. You will never be the best basketball player in your school anymore the way you used to be because there's someone better on YouTube. You can't even finish a video game better than your friends in the basement anymore. I used to play Mario Kart and it was like, I got first. No. There's someone on YouTube who's like literally got it to the 10th of a second. You can't beat the way that they can win. So you're like, oh man, like I suck. So psychologically, we're killing ourselves. We are telling ourselves that we stink over and over and over again. And it never ends. I mean, even Oprah thinks Justin Bieber's got more followers than her. You can be Oprah and feel like a failure. Okay. The third P, so I've already said physical and I've already said psychological. The third P is productivity. According to McKinsey, we now spend 31% of our days bookmarking, prioritizing, and switching between tasks. Not actually doing anything, but simply deciding what we should be doing. Social media and cell phones in general, to some extent, are killing our productivity. They are feeding us an endless array of dopamine-inducing distractions that are constantly stimulating us. Of course, I want to watch the new Saturday Night Live sketch or the best sketch of the day, or and the latest highlight of the NFL game that was on last night. That's like the one highlight, that everyone should watch. And did you see that one-handed catch that OBJ made? And you got to see it. Like, it's feeding us an endless. Imagine like a little hose, like a hamster, feeding into your mouth pellets that you just can't stop eating because they're so tasty.
So how do you personally deal with social media, like on a day-to-day basis? Are you on it at all?
So here's what I do. I have deleted social media apps, all of them, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., from my phone. So the first thing you got to do is get rid of the access point. And by the way, social media companies are smart. They will let you log in from your computer, but because you have to like log in on an actual computer, you will do it much, much, much less frequently. Okay? Because I have to like go to my computer and log into Twitter. Okay? So that's the first thing you do is delete the apps. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I was really serious when I said don't sleep with your cell phone. I say to people, it doesn't matter where your cell phone is in your house. It matters where your charger is. I keep my charger in my basement. It's 2 levels below where I sleep. So in the morning, I'm like, I don't want to walk down 2 levels in my freezing cold boxers, like into the basement to get my phone. I'll just check it later. Between here and there's the bathroom, there's the kitchen, there's breakfast, there's my kids. So I don't make it to check my cell phone, definitely not within the first hour or two of the day. Similarly, because I plug my phone in the basement at night, I'm like, oh, I'll just plug my phone and then I'll go read a book, okay? Or I'll hang out with my wife or whatever. I'll have a cup of tea. I put the cell phone somewhere. Remember when the internet used to be like a box in everyone's basement? Put it back in the box in your basement. Okay, that's a huge, huge, huge thing behavior-wise. We have to put our cell phone chargers far, far away from us. The third thing is our phones and social media, of course, in general, have been designed to be what I call push devices. You need to change them into pull devices. A push device is anything that tells you anything it wants to tell you whenever it wants to tell you. Like the little 99 that hangs out in the corner of your Twitter feed or whatever. It's like you got 99 notifications. You've got this new thing happened to you. You've got so many things that it's trying to tell you. Text messages, alerts, notifications, emails, whatever. What you need to do is live full-time on your cell phone in airplane mode. That's what I do. I'm full-time in airplane mode, and then I'm choosing a few moments in the day, typically a morning once, maybe a lunchtime once, where I go off airplane mode. I experience the crazy feeling of getting a barrage of 17 text messages, 28 emails, and all these uninteresting alerts. I delete most of them, and then I maybe respond to 1 or 2, and then I go back into airplane mode for another 4 or 5 hours. I've actually done a study on this with a productivity author, and we found, for those listening that are in a corporate job that are like, oh, well, he doesn't get me. Like, I got so many emails for work, and I got so many like social media things I got to respond to. What I say to them is, I've done a study on this. And it turns out the 2 best hours of the day to check email, and I know I've taken social media and gone to email, but it's kind of related, is 9 to 10 a.m. and 4 to 5 p.m. And the reason is because you're still giving yourself 2 full hours of email a day, which is a lot. And the second reason is because you then shut off your email from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and you create a 6-hour deep work oasis in the middle of your day. And that, you'll notice, will become massively productive. When they look at the devastating effects of email and social media on our productivity, what they see is people check them like 15 times an hour, or something crazy, like maybe even more than that. So that you're of course you can't do any deep work if you only focus on it for 3 minutes. If I have 3 minutes to write an article,
Right.
then
Impossible.
it'll take me a week to write the article. If I give myself 4 hours, I will write 2 articles in that 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I have no interruptions. And so anyway, this is all relating to chapter 8 of my book, which is called Go Untouchable. In that chapter, I specifically preach about the untethering that we need to do in order to grow our resilience. And I do this 1 day a week, David, where I actually have no contact with my wife, my kids, my family, nothing, like no internet, no phone, nothing. 1 day a week. I go completely untouchable. And you will not be surprised to find those are the days of my deepest creativity, my strongest writing, and like all good ideas. Everything good I do comes from those 1 day a week.
One of the things that I'm not sure you touch on in your book, but I've interviewed several women on this topic of resilience. And one of the things that they point out is that resilience isn't something you develop in the midst of a challenging time. It's something that you develop almost like a bank where you're storing up this resilience inside of you every day so that when there's a challenging experience, you have that to draw upon. And I'm seeing that these secrets, these tools that you're giving us are things that they're everyday tools. You know what I mean? They're things that you can live out each and every day, not just in the midst of a challenge.
Right. Like for example, we were just talking about lose more to win more. And if you read the last part of that chapter, it's like go to parties where you don't know anybody, set up a failure budget where you can experiment with trying new things, count your losses, not just your blessings. Like my takeaways are simple behavior changes, but they're just things we don't normally do. We hide our losses. We don't go to parties where we don't know anybody because we're afraid that we'll be a loser. We don't have a failure budget. So when you want to try that new cooking class or go to that music festival in the different genre, you don't do it because you can't mentally justify spending money on something you might not like. Whereas I'm saying, no, go to Spanish classes or whatever. That's a Canadian reference because no one here knows Spanish or hardly anywhere. You guys is the opposite. Go to a French class. That's what we all get taught in our schools. And then try it because that's worth it to learn it. And yes, my models are simple. My takeaways are light, but they are also the most actionable and accessible way I could distill these things down. In terms of this idea that you said that these women that you interviewed shared about building it up over time, like a bank, a word popped up in my research that I put into this book called hypertrophy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that word before. Most people haven't. Do you know what I'm talking about, Dave?
I have not. No, it was not familiar with me.
So do you ever do like weightlifting of any kind?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the next exercise? Like, I don't know, bicep curl?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so you grab a weight. Let's say you grab a 40-pound weight or something. Okay, I'll grab a 15-pound for myself. And what you do is you curl your hand up and your bicep flexes and you curl it down. You might do it 12 times. The next day, if you did a heavy enough weight or you did enough reps, maybe your bicep tingles a bit. You almost feel like a little burn in it. It turns out what's actually happened in your muscle is something called hypertrophy, meaning that you have worked out that muscle enough that you have created tiny micro traumas in your muscle. They're little rips, actually, almost like tiny little shreds of a piece of paper. Then the next day, what you're actually feeling in the burn is that muscle healing itself. And guess what? When it heals itself, that's when it gets stronger. The muscle actually grows in size through the process of tiny little rips. It gives new meaning to the word shredded, I always think. You know, he's shredded. It's like, well, actually, yeah, literally he has shredded his muscles so that they have regrown to be bigger. That's a physical metaphor for what I'm preaching in this book, which is the sort of psychological metaphor of giving yourself failure budgets, failure allowances, counting your traumas, counting your because all of those things that gave you challenge are things that you get through. To some extent, the old adage, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, actually is correct. People always say, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. If I lose my arm in a welding accident, like I'm no stronger for that. Well, actually, there are studies that show that you are stronger after. Like they've even compared paraplegics to lottery winners and found that a year later, oftentimes the paraplegics are even happier. You know, because they have a new appreciation for their sense of life, whereas the lottery winners have all kinds of new expenses and all kinds of tortured personal relationships.
Sure.
And I know I went on a bit of a rant there. My point is hypertrophy is the process of breaking something down so it can be rebuilt to be stronger. Similar to the goodwill metaphor, it's could you break down or give yourself new hobbies, new experiments, put yourself in unusual situations, make yourself try something that is out of your comfort zone. Take the scuba diving class that you wanted to be taking. Don't think about it. Put yourself in situations where your learning rate is the steepest, which of course is at the earliest stage.
Okay, last question for you, Neil. If somebody's struggling with a situation in their life right now, feeling down, feeling like this could be the period, right? What would you want to say to them in this moment?
Yeah. First of all, like the biggest thing is just forget the book that I'm talking about today and forget like life. Let's just be humans. Let's just say like, hang in there. That's the biggest thing I would say, because we know from a lot of research, we know things often do get better if you can hang in there through the hardest time. Then I'd say seek out support. For me, therapy was extremely helpful. As I was going through my divorce, I ended up seeing a therapist twice a week. I'm down to like once every 3 months today. But like at the time I was twice a week. I would go in for hour-long sessions. I basically bounced off the walls in jubilation because I'd been processing all these dark and heavy thoughts. Do you have a therapeutic, and it can't be your mom or your best friend. I mean, it has to be a trained and licensed therapist that can listen to you and help you navigate those really complex emotions in order to pull them out of you and help you feel safe and strong and get better. And no offense to the mom or the friend, because of course they can be helpful, but I just mean, can you try to get some sort of therapy? And then I would say in some way, shape, or fashion, you need to talk about it yourself. So for me, that was my blog, 1000awesomethings.com. It became a form of journaling that proved very therapeutic. For other people, it could be an actual journal that they keep beside their bedside table that they write in. There's a journaling subscription service that is totally free that I use myself, and I love this, and I don't have affiliation with them, but it's called Awlife, AHHLIFE.com, awlife.com. Do you know about it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So you basically go to this website and you sign up. And for me, I set it as like Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 p.m. But of course, you can do any frequency you want. And then it prompts you over email to write a little journal entry. And it prompts you with a former journal entry that you wrote. So as you keep responding, your journal prompts get richer and richer. And of course, because it's in your email, which is something we're all addicted to, you simply see it and you reply. 1 sentence, 10 sentences, an essay, whatever you want. That therapeutic practice of journaling could not be made more simpler through this. And it becomes a little interjection and a little outlet for you to process yourself. So in summary, hang in there. Okay, that's the add the ... Then find a therapist or somebody that is a professional that you can talk to. Okay, you need that. And then third, you need to process it yourself. My example was my blog, but could you start a journal or use an online service or something that helps you put your thoughts someplace that you can start to work them out of your system?
That's great. That's rich. All right. So I really do want to encourage everybody to get this book. It is really and a great read. It's a quick read, and there are so many actionable insights. Every one of the chapters, these 9 secrets, are wonderful. So you've got access to Kindle, audiobook, hardcover, even an audio CD on Amazon. It's called You Are Awesome: How to Navigate Change, Wrestle with Failure, and Live an Intentional Life. And the link to that is in the show notes, which you can just find by swiping up on your phone. And all of Neil's links will be in our show notes as well. Neil Pasricha is his username on all the social platforms. He won't respond to you, but you can go there and see what he's up to. That might not be true. Maybe you will respond to them.
I get an email once a week with all the messages that are left for me, and I answer all of them in that once a week outlet over email. So I do answer them, but no, I don't go checking it every day.
And he's got a number of websites, globalhappiness.org, 1000awesomethings.com, which you are still posting. Now you've gone beyond 1,000, and now you're doing 1,000 more. And he has a podcast called ebooks.co. No, not ebooks, 3books. My apologies, 3books.co. And he interviews people about the 3 books that have impacted their life. So Neil, we'll put all those links in the show notes, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to share about your book, and we'll keep encouraging people to buy it when it comes out on November 5th, 2019.
More than buying the book, I just really appreciate the connection, the conversation about resilience, and thank you so much for the work you're doing, David. Thanks for having me.
Neil Pasricha is truly awesome, and so is his latest book. I want to encourage you to purchase You Are Awesome by clicking on the link in the show notes. You can get that by swiping up on your phone now or going to our website, insporising.com. If you found this interview to be helpful or think it would be encouraging for a friend, be sure to share it with them. That's the only way that people find out about podcasts, is just by telling them. So take a screenshot on your phone and text this episode to them. Tell them to listen to Neil Pasricha on the Inspiration Rising podcast. They can find it on the Apple or Google podcast app that's probably already loaded on their phone, or you can listen to it on Spotify or Stitcher as well. All right, until next time, have a wonderful week.